There's a lot of flexibility when it comes to importing outside images into your storyboard project in Toon Storyboard Pro. So let's go take a look. I'm just going to start off with clicking the panel or scene in which I'm going to want to import my images. Come up to File, and then you'll find Import, and now you have some choices. Do I want to import an image as its own scene, a number of images as different scenes, or an image as a layer or layers? So I'm just going to start off with import an image as a scene. So Toon Boom sends me right over to a place on my computer where you could choose your image files. So you can navigate anywhere on your computer that you have your image files. So in this case, I'm going to import a scene with this painting, and I have created a brand new scene. Wasn't there before. And I can see that this imported image is on its own layer, and it has the same name that it was, that the file name was. All right, so I'm going to delete that scene to demonstrate now the next option, which is to import images as scenes. So it's the same option. I'm just going to do it with two different images. So I'm going to click on this photo of Cincinnati and the red bloop that I already used. And when I click open here, you're going to see that it's now created two different scenes for the two different images. And these are distinct scenes with distinct scene names. And the layer that was imported here is the file name, and this is the file name too. When I want to import those as scenes, they're going to import directly after whichever panel, whichever scene I have selected. That's why it's important to make sure that you've selected where in the timeline you want to drop or import these new images. But let's go see what it is about layers. When you import images as layers, you're going to import them into a scene that already exists. So I'm going to click on File once again, come down to Import, and now Images as Layers. So when I click on that, again, Toon Boom sends me over to my normal computer file system for me to choose a file anywhere I want to. In this case, I just want one layer, so I am going to pick that Cincinnati photo again, and now Cincinnati is a layer in here, and now it's a background, so I just want to move it down to the bottom, and I'm going to use my selection tool to modify that imported image. And you really can resize your images, and I could stretch it if I wanted to, so it has a lot of the same features as the selection tool. And among other things, if I pop out my layer panel and I have access to the opacity, I can bring that background, I can really fade it out so that it doesn't become overwhelming in the drawing. All right, so now I'm going to press undo to get rid of the Cincinnati photo. I have to go through a few different levels of undo because I did all that transforming and moving, but I want to show you what happens when you do two or more images. So I'm going to import images as layers, and as you would expect, I'm going to select the Cincinnati, I'm going to select the red bloop, press, you can see from here, if you look at this word on the box, it says that you can import images, and there's so many different kinds that you can import. So we've got bitmap, JPEGs, let me bring that up again, OMF, OPT, PAL, PNG, PSD. There's so many different types. They just keep going. So there's quite a wide variation of images that you can import. So here I've imported them once again, and they show up now as two additional layers, and you could do that for many layers. I've done it myself I've imported up to a dozen or more images into the timeline. I tend to make sure that the images I'm importing aren't super gigantic. Like if I have a 20 megabyte high resolution image file, I don't want that to slow down the performance as I'm working. So oftentimes I will save an image at a reasonable size, something that's in the neighborhood of the resolution that I'm working in, and I like to save those imported images in a file like JPEG that takes up a small amount of space. But really, again, that's It's up to every user depending on how they want to do that, but it's a tip so that you can increase performance. All right, I'm going to now delete these layers. So there's another way. Instead of pressing undo, I could just click on this little button in the panel tabs. I'm going to select red bloop and delete that. So the next thing I want to show you is how I import a Photoshop file that has layers. So I'm going to come up to File, Import, and I will go to Images as Layers. So I want to import them as layers into here, but I'm going to go to a Photoshop file that has a couple layers. I click on Open and I get a dialog box that says this image contains multiple layers. Do you want to import each layer separately? And I can make this the default, but I'm going to say yes because I have now a dog that I've drawn on two separate layers, and there's a background layer and a foreground layer, and I imported the Photoshop file so that it now has both of them, and that's really nice because I can now manipulate the background as a separate image or manipulate the foreground as a separate image. And you'll notice as I import these images, in the case of bitmap files that I'm importing, they come in and import as bitmap layers here.